Well, hello. How are you guys tonight? I guess you can't all answer that at once. Sorry. So, like Zach said, my name is Phil. I have been going to India for quite a few years, and I absolutely love it. Started out going a bit reluctant because my daughter went and fell in love and just enjoy being a part of it. Like Zach said, they've been sending people. This church has been sending people for like 13 years. Mostly. Is it not loud enough for you? Is that better? Michael maybe will turn it up a bit. Sorry about that. So, mostly been meeting with a guy named Josh in southern India. The city there is Chennai. It's the fourth largest metropolitan area in India. There's about, the numbers are a little weird, anywhere from 8 to 10 million people in an area that is about Findlay to West Richland and South Kennewick to North Pasco. So just an enormous amount of people in that area. And over the years, they've just done a whole bunch of stuff. They have done large crusades, thousands of people, small crusades, pastors' conferences, Sunday worship with people. They've done VBS stuff, mercy ministry stuff, reaching out to groups of gypsies and lepers and these kinds of things. So every year usually is a trip, or we try to go every year, usually is a trip that includes aspects of every one of those types of things. So the goal when we go is to show a genuine love and concern through a variety of mercy ministries. These efforts open up a doorway to a lot of communities that tend to be pretty poorly treated and pretty much pushed to the side of society. So it's an opportunity to share Jesus with them, to serve them. The second thing we do, our focus is to be evangelical. So we're always looking for opportunities to share Christ with new groups of people and just proclaim the name of Jesus. And then the third thing is to build up the local church, to encourage and equip pastors and church members to go into their own communities and minister. So my goal for tonight is to share a bit about our most recent trip. We just went in late August and just kind of share some of the things that we did there and then share a little bit about what we've done over the last couple of years. Not being able to go, we still were able to support some of the stuff that's going on there. They were hit pretty hard with COVID, especially those in the lowest parts of society. So hopefully you guys, like Zach said, will be encouraged and uplifted to hear what the Lord is doing in India. So Pastor Josh here, this is him and his wife, Dorothy. His oldest is Jaden, and his daughter is Hadessa. This is the pastor that we work with, and he's been involved since the very beginning when Billy was going there. And this family is just a wonderful family. They, all of them, really have a heart for sharing Jesus with the people of India, and really have a heart to reach out to those people who are just underserved. And he's always looking for opportunities to do just that. He coordinates everything when we go over there, so we work with him. He schedules the different events and helps us get set up and in front of the different people that we get in front of. I love that he cares a lot about the pastors. We interact with a lot of pastors who are, I guess, what you might call poor pastors. A lot of them work in churches that are just in the outskirts of town, small villages, and they just don't have a lot of income. And especially during COVID, a lot of cash in society, and so when people don't show up at church, there's no tithings coming in, and so they took it real hard. And so I just love that he always is thinking about those guys and trying to bless those guys, build them up, and help their ministries. And his whole family really is behind this. He's just a super cool guy. So, Mercy Ministry, we got to do a couple of cool things with some elderly groups. This site over here is a gypsy colony. We go see them every year that we're there. This church has done several things for them, built a few houses, drilled a clean well. And so there's a few believers in this community, and it's just a little community. Leprosy, if you don't know, is just kind of an interesting disease. It uncontrolled or unstopped, it will just eat your flesh away. And so every year we see people. Here's a few of them. We see people who are just torn up by this physically. They're torn up by it, and as a result, the society around them doesn't want anything to do with them. They're shunned in a lot of cases. Because of that, people tend to hide it for as long as they can, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Oftentimes, people don't want to even touch them because they're afraid of what they might come home with. So when we go, we get to interact with them. You get to shake their hands. You get to put your arm around them. You get to speak to them. We always bring food because a lot of them can't go out and work, so they're dependent on what family will bring them. This is a community too that Josh works with. They're there every month. They meet with them, do a worship service with them, serve communion, talk to them. A lot of times they bring them food. So it's real fun to be a part of those guys and to encourage them, lift them up, and to see how they're doing. The other group we got to meet with, this side I guess it is, this is a group of elderly people who don't have family or have very little family. And so they're, again, very low income. The church that we hooked up with here has been reaching out to these guys, and they're a mix. Some of them are believers, some of them are not. And so they're working with them and serving them and just always looking for ways to share the Lord with them. So it was really cool to be able to go with them. We shared with them a little bit, and they taught us how to open up coconuts and have fresh coconut, which is not as good as you might think, but it was still a lot of fun to be with them and to see the smile and the joy on their face as people were interacting with them. The Irula people, and I should mention too, both the gypsy colony, these elderly couples or elderly families, the next few slides where we're reaching out to people and trying to share the gospel with them. They see us for just a few moments, and then they're still left there, right? Even if we get to spend a couple hours with them, we're only there for just a brief part of their day, and so it's really cool. Josh is very adamant that when we go out to one of these communities, that there's already a pastor who's working with them, who's reaching out to them, so that there's that connection, so that there's that follow-up. And so it's I don't even know if it's happened since I've been there, where we go to a community where there's nobody else already involved there. The goal is to not only bless these people, but to bless this pastor who has been trying to work in this community. And so it can help open up doors for him when they see that we're willing to serve them just the same as he is. So that's a really important aspect of some of this ministry, so that we don't tell them about who Jesus is and then give them no mechanism to learn and to grow and to have that discipleship aspect. So this group of people, we saw probably 4 or 5. They call them Irula people. They're snake charmers by trade, and they are very low caste, and they get jobs by catching rats and snakes in fields. They might help farmers weed and do things like that. Many of them do not own their own home. In fact, I don't know that we saw any that did this trip. But so they live, if you're familiar with like crop circles where you got that spot in the middle where the sprinklers can't get to, right? There's those spaces between the fields there, and they'll set up a little community with 6 or 8 or 10 houses, often pretty shabby houses. It's on the next slide, sorry. I see 2 slides up here. It's often pretty shabby houses that's just kind of makeshift, and they'll raise a whole family in this. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to go out there and minister to these guys, play with them. This year we brought some balls with us, and this little girl here, she saw that ball and her eyes just lit up. And even with the language barrier, I just threw the ball at her just one time, and she was all in. She was ready to play ball, and we played for, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, just tossing this thing around and waiting for the other stuff to happen. But it's cool. We get to bless each of these families with about a month's worth of food, which is about 10 kilos of rice. You can convert that. And then a bag of like oil and things like that. And it's just a blessing. And what's fun too is anytime we're giving them this rice, it's good rice. The rice that they typically get is stuff that's not very clean, and so it might have a lot of the farm dust and rocks and stuff from just being handled and pulled out of the field. And so when they get this rice, not only is the rice itself a gift, but it's also a good gift. And so it's really just an attempt to show love to them in say an extravagant way, just like the Lord is pouring out in our lives in ways that we don't deserve. So it's super fun to see these guys. It's super hard to see these guys. These houses that these guys live in is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just tough to see. And I don't know. They're in it every day. This is an example of those houses. This is actually a community that we went to. Pastor Josh has been working with these guys for several months. And actually a couple of people in our fellowship have been supporting building some new houses for these guys. And they're not full-on proper houses because they don't own the land. The government can run them out of there at any time. But it pours them a concrete slab and gives them a structure and a good roof so that they have a dry place to stay and somewhere that's not, when it rains, filling full of water. So it's cool. We visited, like I said, 4 or 5 communities, shared the gospel with them, invited them to know who Jesus was. You don't always get a lot of response from that stuff, but trying to follow up with the pastors and stuff, it definitely builds roads, makes connections, and gives these pastors an opportunity to continue to go into these groups and show love to them and share Jesus with them and invite them back into their own churches. So pretty fun. This is an orphanage that we went to. This year we went to, I think, just 1 orphanage. Last year we went to like 4 or 5. But this is just a really cool couple. This is Pastor Allen and his wife, and I can't remember her name, but they have had a heart for orphans for 20 plus years. They've been working, they started in the city, and it just got very expensive, and so they looked for opportunities to move out away from the city where they could save some costs. And so that's what they do. When they take on an orphan, they make a commitment to that orphan to keep them until they grow to adulthood, right? And they don't always get to, right? The government will take them back to their family or whatever, but they're all in, and they're looking for opportunities to get them all the way through college to change their lives. And they speak Jesus to these kids all the time, every day. They're teaching them how to study the Bible. They're teaching them how to pray. They're teaching them how to serve each other. They're teaching them how to work hard, and it's just really cool. Their son, they have 1 biological son. He's very intentional with his schooling. He wants to go to school to be a lawyer with a minor in social work, or flip the other way. I can't remember. Specifically for the purpose of being able to help his dad. Because the orphan whole scene is very difficult right now in India. They have made a lot of rules that have good intentions. Sex trafficking and things like this with orphans is something that's a really big deal. their rules that they put in place look good, but they're not all that effective, and they hurt groups like this who are trying to do it. They don't ask for money for the government. They just offer a place, and they do all their own fundraising. But it makes it really challenging for these guys. They can't even house girls and boys under the same roof. So even if you have a place that's big enough and separate enough and everything, you can't do it if it's under the same roof. So they have to rent 2 places so they can keep boys and girls. But they're, like I said, their heart is in it. These guys are the real deal. They love on these kids, and it's super fun to go play with these kids. And they sat down and listened to us tell stories to them, and just laughed and played. And it was just neat to see that fatherly love towards an orphan, right? That heavenly father love towards us. See it at play and in action there was just real encouraging. My slide got funny on me, didn't it? So one of the things, like I mentioned, we do is try to do crusades, outreach stuff when we're there. Unfortunately, the government of India is getting more and more radical Hindu, and that kind of stuff is getting harder and harder to do. And then COVID really ushered in an opportunity for them to get even better at making life hard for this kind of stuff. And so we weren't able to do just a full-on outreach or crusade setting this time, just because there was concerns about getting shut down and creating problems for some of the other local ministries that are there. So we had to get a bit creative, and this year we did 2 basically sports, I can't think of the name, I'm not a sports guy, tournament, that's it. We did 2 full-day sports tournaments where several of the coaches on the one were they're believers, and they're intentionally reaching out to these kids anyway. And so we invited them all there. Several teams with a bunch of non-believers. Most of the kids probably, I would say, were non-believers. And then just taught them to play with integrity, to have good sportsmanship, to work hard, and then sat them down and just shared the gospel with them. Spent about 15 or 20 minutes sharing the gospel. Actually, it's a story. Kyle and Michelle Skinner went with us, and Kyle's the sports guy, I'm not. And so when we were deciding who's speaking where, I'm like, hey, you do the sports thing. You can do sports analogies and all that. It's all yours. And then they missed their flight out of Seattle. And so they ended up getting 24 hours later than we did, or getting to India 24 hours later than we did. So I got put in the spot where I had to share with these guys, and it's so good to see the Lord. I mean, He's faithful. I got up there and said things, and He did what He does, and He made it work, and he made it really good. But like I said, these events were a trial run. Overall, we felt like there was pretty good success with it, and we'll look for other ways to do stuff like this where we can kind of get around some of the government regulations on doing stuff like this. So 2 stories for you. The gentleman over here, he was in the Indian Army, and he injured his eye, and that caused him to get discharged from the Army. And he was in a spot where he was just discouraged, where all of a sudden he's among some of the best, and now he's not good enough. And kind of interesting, that was like the premise of what I stood there and shared with him. I'm like, none of us are good enough, right? It's Jesus that we need, and we need to recognize that. And so he comes up to us. Actually, he was videoing us, and I didn't know that he was a part of one of the Hindu nationalist parties, political parties. But apparently he had some earrings in, and that, to the other guys, the locals, that signaled something. And so he was videoing me as I was talking, and so the pastors asked him if he would delete it, because they didn't want us getting in trouble. And he totally complied, and just started sharing with the guys. He's like, hey, what this guy said is just, it's really impacting me. I'm struggling with being kicked out and feeling worthless, and just began to share his whole story with him, and then came up and through translator shared a bit with us. And so we were able to just spend some time talking to him, pointing him towards the Lord, and we got to pray for him, and it was just a really cool confirmation that God was doing something there, and that he was honoring our time and investment in that event. This other guy over here, the guy in the blue shirt, or excuse me, the guy in the white shirt here, the shortest guy in the white shirt there. This pastor, Pastor Victor, has been, he reaches out to young people who are struggling with different types of addiction. A lot of it is substance abuse type stuff, but addictions as a whole. And he uses sports as a mechanism to bring those guys in, to attract them in, and begin to have conversations with them and work with them. The biggest property to do that with, and really the only property to play things like soccer and cricket and stuff, is the school grounds, and he needs the school board's permission to do that. And so they kind of let him do it, but not really. They generally just kind of turn a blind eye to it. But for this event, he needed their permission, and they granted. And then at the end of the day, invited everybody back to his church. His church is just a block or two away. And he figured that, some of them would show up. All 100 plus youth who were playing showed up, and then 3 of these guys from the school board showed up. And he's tried to work with these guys for a long time and tried to invite them in and build relationships. And they show up, and they sit there for 20 minutes listening to Kyle, 25 minutes listening to Kyle tell about his own story and addictions, and how ultimately it was only turning his life over to Jesus that he was able to overcome any of this kind of stuff. And so they just straight up heard the gospel the whole time, and then we handed out shirts and jerseys and stuff so these guys can continue to play as teams and stuff. We invited him up to participate as a leader in the community, honoring these kids and encouraging them to continue to do well. And it was just a really, really neat opportunity to continue to build those connections and help that pastor build those connections so that he can continue to work in that community, continue to have opportunities to share Jesus. And so just super, super fun. The other full day event we did that was mostly just soccer. There was 100 plus kids here, girls and guys teams. The main pastor who works with these kids and kind of helps us organize, that actually was with us a bunch during the week, is Pastor Dickin and his wife Catherine. These guys are rock stars. They love the Lord. They love sports. They love these kids that they get to work with, and they love just pouring out. They get these kids in their house all the time. They're constantly just teaching them about who Jesus is and calling them into a relationship. And he's pretty effective. The kids listen to him and they respect him. They respect his wife, which is way cool. There was non-believers and believers there, right? Out on the field, soccer tends to be kind of a pushy sport, right? A couple of guys start getting in a fight out there, and Catherine goes charging out on the field. I'm like, oh my goodness, she's like this tall. And I'm like, she is going to get creamed. And she walked right on into the middle of that. Nobody touched her, right? They all had respect for her. And she just called them on, excuse me. She just called them on it, right? Her and Pastor Dick and her out there just working with these guys, and just, it's like, you could hear his tone. It's like, man, you guys are better than this. Don't cave to just fist fighting, right? Work through your issues. So they're pretty cool. They chase after the Lord hard, and their ministry really shows it. This is just more of us handing out stuff. Every one of these events, there was some trophies or jerseys, sports equipment. Continue to get these guys into a place where they'll come back, and Pastor Victor and Pastor Dickin will have an opportunity to continue to share the Lord with them. I would encourage you to pray for these guys. This ministry for both of these guys is a much needed ministry. Pastor Victor was telling us in his city, what was the numbers? Like 1 in 3 young people are dealing with alcohol addiction, drug addiction of some sort. And so the opportunity to minister to these kids and to change lives is huge. So really would encourage you to pray for that. Marriage ministry. Marriage ministry is a ton of fun. It's something my wife and I have been doing a little bit over the last couple of years, more and more. and we got to do a bunch of it while we were there. We had 4 different events where probably more than 150 couples were involved. One of those events was an overnight event where we had 25 couples from low income. They were pastors and their wives. Never could afford to stay like that. We had 2 one-day events where there were pastor-type conferences in the middle of the day where we asked them to bring their wives, specifically asked them to bring their wives, when the wives aren't used to being taken to stuff like that. So they got a kick out of it. And then we did a one-day conference with a young church where a bunch of young families who were really trying to follow after the Lord. And it was just fun to share with them. We talked about all kinds of stuff, pushed boundaries, cultural boundaries. Some of they tend to not go places that we might be a little more comfortable with, but talked to the pastors about keeping their marriage a priority over their ministries. We talked to them about how to deal with conflict in marriage. We talked to them about forgiveness. We talked to them about sex, which is totally outside the norm for them. We talked to them about standing firm in their faith as pastors, with the goal of really just trying to get them, encourage them to live a life that is scripture-based, not a life that is culturally influenced. And it's kind of weird. I mean, they struggle with the same thing. Every time I go there, I'm reminded that they're not all that different. You get off the plane and it smells different, it sounds different, everything about it is different, they dress different, they talk different. But as you get to interact with them and get to know some of them, they're just not all that different than we are. They have the same kind of struggles we do, right? They have the culture bleeding into the church just like we do. They have people who cave to that and people who stand firm against that. They're just not all that different than we are. City Rock Church. This is the group of young couples that we dealt with. Most of these couples only had been married just 2 or 3 years, I think, at the longest, or maybe 5 years at the longest. These guys are super on fire. This is a church that's just a lot of fun to go to. These are all English-speaking people. Well, they speak both languages, but they speak English really well. So their worship is English, their sermons are in English. We can stand around and visit with people in English. And usually we tend to go there towards the end of the week. And so we spent all week at all these other events where you don't understand anybody. The worship is in a different language. You can't just stand around after church and talk to somebody very easy because you need a translator and there's just not that many of them go around. But when we go to these guys, it's almost like a rest. Which is a lot of fun because you can interact and you can talk with them. And like I said, these guys are on fire. They're all sitting on the floor, and it's a tile floor. They don't care. They just want to be together, doing church, learning about the Lord, being encouraged. Super good. We did a Q&A with these guys, which is, again, something that's just kind of culturally different for them. But they actually opened up. They asked questions. We had some good conversations. We had one young lady who just very, I think, courageously stood up and asked some questions about her husband. And it was just a whole lot of fun to see how the Lord was working, moving through these people as we were willing to be vulnerable ourselves and help answer some questions about where we've struggled in our marriage and try and give them advice as they go too. The Village Pastor's Marriage Retreat, this is the overnight retreat. This was way cool. Probably the coolest thing about it is that extravagant love, right? That picture that Jesus just pours out on us so much more than we can deserve. We rented a conference room and paid for hotel rooms at a resort that's nice. There's nothing wrong with it. Not 5-star by any means, but for a lot of them, it might as well have been a 5-star because they're never going to this or a 5-star. Just financially, the means is just not there. And so to see them walk in and just kind of be overwhelmed by having a nice room, like for some of these people, the hotel room was bigger than their house. And that was for the two of them to share for the evening. To see one pastor, we did dinner and lunch with them, and it was just a normal buffet. To hear a pastor say that he's never seen that much food at one time, and let alone be able to have as much or any of it that he wants to. And that guy's like, he's older than I was. It's like, oh my gosh, it was just, I don't know. It was a reminder of how blessed I am to have the things I have, right? We sit down and talk about buying groceries, and usually it's, no, I don't want that, no, I don't want that, and they're just like, yeah, give me anything you got. So it was super neat to be there at a nice resort. Our goal really was to give them the opportunity to have time as a couple, to encourage them to make a marriage a priority. Culturally, kids are very involved in families, and a lot of times they stay in parents' bedrooms. Some of that is just the function of they have one room, right, or two rooms, a bedroom and everything else. And so kids are there, and there's often that the same thing we see here, where moms put a lot of effort into the kids and dad kind of gets the back seat and vice versa. They struggle with the same thing. And so our goal was to encourage them to live life biblically, keeping your priorities right, your wife, your kids, your church. A lot of times they get that flipped backwards. So it was pretty cool. We did an event like this in 2020 when we went, right before COVID. And the response that we got then, and the feedback that we're still getting, was that it had a huge impact. Pastors going back to their churches, actually teaching their churches some of the things that we taught them, and trying to make a difference, trying to set an example for their own churches. It's kind of interesting. This year, one of the topics that I talked on was forgiveness. And I was telling Kyle before we left, I feel like this is like really, really basic. I'm going to go tell pastors something that is very elementary. And Kyle did a good job of encouraging me. And when we get there, the very basic is exactly what worked. It's exactly what they needed. And they were just wide-eyed. It was kind of crazy to me. I'm not a pastor, and I don't consider myself a teacher in this format. But the Lord totally used it, and he totally did stuff with it. I had these pastors coming up to me going, next time, can you come teach this to my church? I'm like, well, how about you just go home next week and teach it to them? Don't wait for me to come back next time. And the look on their face was like, oh, yeah, I guess that's something I can do too. Like, yes, it's your church, you teach them. I didn't make any of this stuff up. It's right here in Scripture, right? I'm not that smart. So, this a picture of Kyle and Michelle, because I don't have a picture of the lady. So you get a picture of them instead to help me remember to tell you a story. One of the couples that was there, pastor and his wife, had been married like 20 years, I think. They were Hindus, and they got married against their family's wishes. Arranged marriage is still something that's very popular, very common. And so their parents were super against this. And so they actually spent the first couple of years of their marriage trying to stay away from their parents, so their parents wouldn't break them up. And in that time, the Lord had brought her in contact with a Christian woman who began to mentor her and discipleship her. And ultimately, she gave her life to the Lord, and her husband followed a few months later. Fast forward 20 years, he's a pastor now. One of the things that she always wanted to do was to have a Christian marriage. They had a Hindu marriage, but they never had a Christian marriage. And because of finances, because of timing, they weren't able to do that. So back up, a couple hours before she's telling us a story, Josh pulls Jackie and I out, and he's like, hey, can you help me with this stuff? And we're like, yeah, sure, what's up? And he's like, hey, I need you to cut these roses, and we're going to get communion ready. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, oh, we're going to do this recommitment ceremony, vows recommitment for these guys. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I was laying in bed last night, and this came to my mind, and so we got all this stuff, we're just going to do it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, whatever. I'm here to serve. I'll just do what he tells me, and we help him get the stuff cut up. And then we go in there, and in typical fashion, they're making a big to-do out of it, and they're taking forever to get organized, and can't understand most of the instructions anyway because they're in Tamil. And so we're just trying to play along and trying to be nice. I'm looking at my wife going, okay, this will be over soon. This must be something. I don't know. There must be cultural stuff here that I don't get, right? So we go all the way through this, and it really actually ended up being a really cool thing. But back to this woman, she's telling Josh, she's standing in the lobby, and by now in the story she's crying, which is out of character for a lot of these ladies, especially standing in the lobby of this hotel. She's like, you guys You guys gave me a Christian marriage. You gave me the opportunity to renew my vows from a biblical perspective, right? Not a Hindu marriage. And she's just in tears about this, and her husband is there, and he's just, they can't believe what's going on. And it was, to me, it was such an encouragement that God would orchestrate all these people to pour out and bless her, right? To bless this couple. And especially, it was a warning to me, right? I don't have to understand the things that the Lord is doing. I just have to be obedient to him, right? Josh, in that case, was being used by God. Josh said, come do this thing. I didn't need to have a weirded out attitude about it. I just needed to obey and participate in the thing that the Lord is doing, because he just spoke to this woman in a way that I mean, I'm sure I can't describe it. I'm sure I'm not describing it very well. But it was a way cool encouragement to hear this woman is going back, just renewed and encouraged to live a life fully committed to her husband and the Lord, and not this baggage of having a Hindu wedding 20 some years ago. So it's pretty cool. One of the fun things about these pastors' conferences, especially this time, Pastor Dickin, the soccer coach I was telling you about earlier, he came to each one of them with us, and he got these guys playing games, which again is stretching them. They don't like to do this. We did one game, and I don't think, this game here, they each have a cup, a little Dixie cup in their mouth. And so he has to bend over and fill the cup up and then put it in his mouth, and then he has to pour it into her cup, right? And she's holding the cup in her mouth. And if you do it right, it looks like you're getting ready to kiss. And when he demonstrated that to them, their eyes are like huge and they start laughing. They're like a bunch of middle schoolers. It was super funny. But doing this and getting them to play these games and kind of get outside of their pastor boxes and all this kind of stuff, then Dickin will step in and he'll just talk about, one of the games they put a ball between their head, and walk, and he just ties in, you guys are going to have to work together. This thing you're working at, or this, it's not always easy, but if you guys communicate and you work together, and every single game that he does, there's this moment at the end where he's like, are you paying attention? Do you get the real story? Do you get the real message? What's going on here? And it's just so fun to see these guys connect and come away from these things just thinking about things a bit different. Sunday worship. Sunday worship is a ton of fun. This year we went to, over 2 different Sundays, we went to 3 different churches, I think. And it's just, we join them for their normal worship. Josh will usually have one of us give the sermon for that morning. But it's a really neat opportunity to see how believers in different cultures operate and how they think about church on a Sunday morning. And it's fun to see what's similar and what's not. It can be a bit hard. The whole language thing is a bit different. One of the churches we go to, the whole service is like, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, something like that. It's so long. And almost all of it you don't understand at all, right? And so it can be a bit hard to be there. And this year, especially at one of them, I'm trying to have a good attitude. And it's not like I'm being grumpy or anything, but it can be really easy to check out because you don't know what's going on. And so I'm trying to pray for what's going on. Every now and then, I was sitting next to the senior pastor. He'd lean over and say, hey, they're talking about this. But it's broken English and it's kind of loud, so you get pieces of it, And then we're worshiping, and worship goes on for an hour. And trying to have an attitude of worship, even though I don't know what they're singing. And there's this moment, I think, where I'm starting to just get done. I'm done with this. It's gotta be over soon. And I start paying attention. I start hearing, that tune sounds familiar. What's going on here? And for the life of me, I still can't remember what song it is. I think I've asked my wife 100 times. I don't remember what song it is. But I start to recognize it. And then after a minute or so, I'm like, I absolutely know what song that is, right? And so then I just start singing it because I know the words. It's an old song I learned as a kid, right? And then they do this thing sometimes with some of these old songs that are American songs where they'll switch into English and start singing it, right in the middle of the song. And sure enough, they switch into English, and I'm right in where I'm supposed to be. I know what song. I'm like, oh, yes. And it was just such an encouragement that the body of Christ is much broader than we tend to think. I think a lot of times we think this is the church, but the reality of it is there are believers all over the world, and we're united in the same thing. And that moment of standing there with these guys, worshiping with them, a song that I knew, and the Lord just speaking to me, going, "You guys are all one, right? I may not know the song, and I may not know the way they do their thing, but we still love the same Jesus, and we all still want to serve the same Jesus." And so in that moment, it was just super encouraging to be there, and I think the Lord was really just working on me. He is so good to work in me, and I could probably tell you 100 stories about that. So I'm not right now. Anyway, ongoing ministry. So like I said, we do stuff with Josh and work with some of the things that he's doing beyond just traveling over there. Certainly that's an important part of it, but he's always reaching out. The way I like to think of it is Calvary Chapel Tri-Cities is one of the tools that God has given him to reach out and minister to the people in his community. So there are other churches that help support him and do stuff with him. In fact, he's coming later this month. While he's here, he's going to hit Texas and Montana and Portland and hook up with some of these churches that support him and some of the work that he's doing, the ministry there. So all the way during COVID, when they shut things down, and it was super sad to see. They shut state borders down and literally wouldn't let food trucks come across the border, and so people were literally starving. And here we were complaining about running out of toilet paper. So we were, there were several times over the COVID timeframe where we were able to help send him funds, and he was able to do different feeding things. Like I mentioned earlier, pastors, especially in the small churches, took a hit because they couldn't do church at all. They've only been able to really start back up church this year. So able to bless some of these pastors and help give them just some finances to just buy food and to pay for some basic stuff. Every year, in fact, this picture is Christmas last year. The last 2 years we've done a Christmas project that he calls Go Tell It Over the Mountains. And it is an opportunity to share Christmas with these people, which is not something that they do to the same degree that we do. And so it's a real unique opportunity not only to share something that's a little bit different, and they're familiar with it, but not to the extent that we are, but to really inject the story of who Christ is and the fact that he came here for a purpose to save us. And that's just something that they don't, their gods don't do that kind of stuff, right? They hope that they can appease the gods and the gods will leave them alone, right? Some of the gods are for asking favor for, but by and large, the idea that God would reach out and connect with me, reach out and draw me to him just because he loves me is something that they don't think about. And so he uses Christmas as an opportunity to do this. Last year we bought school clothes for it was like 100 kids almost, something like that, which is a big deal because you don't go to school unless you have the right clothes on, right? You need a uniform to get in school. Even the girls, they got to have their hair done right. And teachers have been known to literally cut girls' hair because they didn't have it tied up properly. I know, it's super goofy, right? But so giving them clothes gives them an opportunity to go to school and an opportunity to change their future because they can get educated. So it's really cool. That's been a fun one to help with. Building houses. This is the houses or the Irula community where I was telling you somebody in our fellowship or a couple people in our fellowship have supported this project over the last 8 months or a year or whatnot. They go from something like this to something a little bit better, right? It's got some concrete walls, keeps the rain out, keeps the wind off. Doing something like this just changes changes a lot of things for people, right? You get your head up out of the dirt, and you don't have to sleep in puddles. We went, the first trip I went, towards the end of the trip, we had just a little bit of money left. We paid for a new roof, like one of these grass roofs, and paid for dirt. They didn't even have walls like this one has, and put enough dirt in their floor so that it raised the center of their floor up so that when it rained, it didn't come in. And we went in there, and they were thankful. You would have thought we bought them, a huge house or something. So this kind of stuff really impacts people, really opens doors for sharing the gospel. And I love that Josh, his real strong conviction that you can't separate serving people from the message of Christ. They both got to go together. If you do one without the other, you're not giving a complete picture of who Christ is. And so he's always, the two of those always go together for him. Serving these people, telling them who Jesus is, inviting them into a relationship. One of the other projects is the House on the Rock project. This is a community of, I don't know if they're gypsies. They do move a whole lot. And so they'll travel around a bunch out of necessity, not because they want to, but that's just how they have to earn a living. And so what Josh does, their church actually takes on this community of people. They teach them how to work, right? How to find jobs that are stable. So a lot of times they're working with farmers, so they teach them how to make connections and go buy produce from the farms and then bring it into the city and then resell it in the city as an income. And in that they create connections where these guys don't want to leave. The other part of that is they try to build houses for them. And so there's some restrictions because there's a lot more money that goes into these. This house here is about, I think currently they're running about $3,500. That's a 2-room house right there. One side's the bedroom, one side's everything else. But they have to own the land, and then they have to agree not to sell that house and the land for like 8 or 10 years. They want them to take it, but it's completely a gift to them. But it allows routine connection with these guys, and there's actually a bunch of guys who are in this little village area. They're believers, and they travel 45 minutes every Sunday morning, most of them to be there at the 6 a.m. service so that they can go to church and then still go work. So there's probably a dozen or more houses in this community. We visited it last time that we were there. Jeremy Camp, what's the name of that ministry? Gosh, I can't remember. He's got a ministry, and he also works with Josh building these houses. They build 2 or 3 houses a year. So it's really, really cool. The last time that we went there, watermelon season, and we show up, and Josh is like, don't ask these guys about the watermelons. Don't look at the watermelons. Don't say nothing about the watermelons. We're like, what's the deal? And he's like, I don't want these guys giving us watermelons. They need to sell those watermelons. Don't say anything about the watermelons. There was a couple people in a different car. They didn't hear that message, and my daughter goes, wow, that's a lot of watermelons. And there's these huge piles of watermelons. And the next thing you know, they're chopping watermelons up and giving us like quarter watermelons, and they were amazing. But those guys they think we can eat a lot. I don't know if it's because we're bigger, but they're like, I ate a whole watermelon, like this big. Mostly because I was trying to be nice, but at some point I had to go, you gotta stop. So they're real cool. They get it. You get these families planted, get the kids in school, and you can change whole generations. You get these guys to stop traveling around. A lot of these lower caste communities will marry their kids off, particularly the daughters off, super early. In fact, one of the communities we went to, there was like a 4-day-old baby, and we're like, okay, who's mom? And it's this 13-year-old girl standing there. And so getting them planted changes that kind of stuff. Get them involved in church, and they become believers. They change their mindset. They begin to do things differently, and whole generations are changed as a result of something as simple as a $3,500 house right there. It's pretty cool to see these guys go from something like this to something like this. It's a dramatic difference. So what's the point? I find myself asking this kind of question always. Why? Why am I doing this? Why? And most of the time the Lord is pretty faithful to answer that question. I don't think he expects us to be just blindly following him. I mean, we have to have faith and we have to be willing to obey regardless of what he says. But so often he's willing to explain it. He's willing to help us understand. And so there's several reasons why to stand up here and tell you guys about all the stuff that we've done. The first one is just kind of a practical reason, and that is simply to just report back to you guys. There are people in this church who prayed for us while we were gone. There's people in this church who financially supported the trip. There's people in the church over the years who have financially supported Josh in the ministry. And to me personally, as the guy responsible for dealing with a lot of that stuff, it's important that you guys see what's going on so that you can judge for yourself whether that time, that energy, that resource that God has given you was worth your effort, right? I think we're supposed to be good stewards of the finances that we have been given, and so to hear an answer on how that money was used gives you an opportunity to evaluate that yourself, right? The other thing, and definitely more important than that part, is to encourage you to consider missions as something you should be a part of, right? Obviously, that includes potentially going somewhere or giving, but I think to focus on those two parts would be to miss the point entirely. There are lots of different ways to be in part of the missions work that the Lord is doing. Some of the things I can think of coming up, this church is sending 2 groups of people to Mexico here in the next couple of months, right? And so there's opportunities there. I'm sure there's kids that could use some weeds to pull for a few bucks. Certainly both of those groups could be, would love to have you praying for them. So maybe one way for you to be involved in some of that mission work, if you can't go or even can't afford to give, which is okay, right? Is to be praying about it, right? Maybe you could get a list of the names of people who are going and add them every morning, spend some time praying on them. Maybe when they go, you can do a time of, fasting, maybe skip lunch every day they're gone and just spend time praying for these people, praying for the families that are down there that are going to receive the houses, right? Obviously, we're going to India next year. There's still work there. There's room to pray about that, pray about being involved, pray about supporting it somehow. Youth in our church go every year. They do something from junior high up to the high schoolers, the young adults, right? They're all doing stuff. There's always an opportunity to be involved in missions work right here in our own church. So my encouragement to you would be to really seek the Lord. How might he be asking you to be involved? Maybe it's praying, maybe it's going, maybe it's giving. I don't know, right? There are so many different ways to be involved. I think the key is that we have a willingness to do what the Lord calls us to do. He certainly has a heart for people and wants people to know who he is and wants us to serve people. This is one avenue that you can do that. Probably the most important reason, though, is to just encourage you to change your thinking about what missions work is. So you can be involved in telling people about Jesus right here. You don't have to go to India, right? You may not even have to walk out these doors to tell somebody about Jesus who doesn't have a relationship with him, right? And so my hope is that you guys would just be encouraged to respond to the gift of the gospel that you've been given. Right? Be willing to be bold for Jesus. Be willing to have a heart like he has for the people around you. Every time we go, I see Josh and the way he interacts with people, the way he interacts with homeless women on the streets, to pastors, to people in his own church. He genuinely wants them to have a closer encounter with Christ. Everything, you can just watch it. Everything in the way he moves around and stuff is motivated from that, and it just encourages me that I myself need to have a better attitude about that, have more willingness to get out of my own head and to quit worrying about what people think about me, and to just be faithful to tell people who Jesus is, and to tell them that he loves them and that he wants them a part of his family, right? And so really, my hope is that you would just be encouraged to do just that. Last slide, if you want to follow some of the stuff that we do over there, there's two groups. One of them, the bottom group there is a public group. You can just go like the page. We don't post a lot of stuff, or we're moving away from posting a lot of stuff about what we do there because the government is getting goofy. And even when we were there, we're careful about what we post. Even the posts that Josh is posting since we've been gone, he doesn't include pictures of us just because the government is getting more and more goofy about it. So the one on the top there is a private group. Depending on where you live or where your location settings are, you might be able to get right in. You might have to wait to get approved. But that's where we post stuff about things that we're doing. We posted about our trip every day when we were gone. So if you like it, you can go back and see each day some of the things that we did, and a whole lot more pictures of all of that different kinds of stuff. So thanks for letting me come up here and share with you. Hopefully you were encouraged and you enjoyed hearing about some of the work that the Lord has been doing over there. Like I say, every time I go there, it's so encouraging, and the Lord, he does stuff. I always, two areas that I don't feel like I'm very good at specifically with regards to this is the fundraising part. I find that difficult to talk about the money part of it. And then I don't feel like I'm a good teacher, or I don't feel like standing up here in front of people is a gifting that I have been given. And both of those got to happen, right? I got super nervous when Kyle and them missed their plane, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do all of these. I'm going to have to literally double the amount of sermons that I'm giving in the week. And thankfully that didn't have to happen. But every time, especially the last two times where I did a whole lot more teaching, the Lord was just good. As I was faithful to be obedient to him, he just made it work. And I got up there and I shared what he put on my heart. The quality would be debatable, but he used it, right? Because he's so faithful to take our offering and turn it into something that he wants when we stand there and just try to be obedient to him, right? And so hopefully you'll find that encouraging and be willing to step out however the Lord might be calling you as well. So let me pray for you, and then we'll get out of here. So God, just thank you for your love. Thank you, Lord, that you care so much for us. Thank you that you want us to be a part of the things that you're doing, that you call us into a deeper spot, not because you need us, but really because you want us. You enjoy it when our hearts are moved towards you, and you enjoy it when we spend time with you, and you just like doing stuff. We know you could do it a whole lot better without us, but nonetheless, you still want us there. You still want us a part of what you're doing, Lord. So thank you for that. Thank you for always loving us, always just being so good to us and kind to us. I pray, Lord, that you would encourage and lift up these people here tonight, Lord, and just help them to be bold for you, help them to be obedient to the calling that you have given them, help them to step out and share your name, share who you are, share your love with the people they interact with on a daily basis, Lord. So thank you, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.